In today's Change Through Pain podcast episode, I sit down with Braden, who shares his raw and vulnerable story of a deep, dark place in his life when he was addicted to drugs and alcohol, found himself unconscious, near death in a field after overdosing, has made his way back through recovery, gaining sobriety, family, friends, changing his mindset, changing his habit, changing his outlook on everything, and discovering that life is a gift and life is beautiful, and to have a second chance at living a new and better life and living life as the best version of yourself is the only way to truly experience how beautiful life can be. Let's get started. So if you would, describe your childhood and parents and how this impacted you changing through pain.
Man, so I grew up in a kind of smallish country town outside of Fort Worth. You know, my parents, I have wonderful parents. I mean, I really do. Like they have been examples to me. I mean, my entire life, as far as just good role models and people that have been strong in their faith and done everything that they could have done for us. As I have two younger sisters, and so I couldn't be more thankful for that and my childhood, really. As far as like the things that happened in my childhood and that allowed me to really kind of or that I have reflected back on, my parents, the way that they were raised and their parents and how they shaped them and ultimately being parents to me and my siblings. My dad grew up in a pretty I wouldn't necessarily say emotionless, but affection and things like that weren't real commonplace, and my mom kind of grew up in an opposite where affection was definitely more prevalent there. But both my parents are products of divorce households, and so and my parents have been together, gosh, I think almost 40 years now. And it's really inspiring. I mean, they've been through some things and they worked through a lot, and again, their faith is part of that too. And I think also coming from the childhoods that they had and seeing the conflicts with having divorced parents. And I'm not knocking that, but that's just that's part of our story. Kind of growing up, man, I mean, I was just kind of like this dorky little kid that we lived I was fortunate to grow up like on the farm, and my grandparents had a lot of property next to the property that we own, and they raised horses. And then we also had horses, and my dad was a bull rider, and he was also a rodeo clown and big into rodeo. And so that was kind of part of our lives too. And so we had our own arena next to our house, and people were team roping on the weekends. And I spent a lot of my time as a kid riding horses, and I wanted to be a cowboy like my dad. And I really looked up to my dad, and I really wanted his approval too. That was a big part of it. And I was the oldest, and I always kind of felt like there was this pressure on me to, I don't know, succeed in whatever I was doing. And I mean, even as a kid, my mom didn't really want me to do dangerous things so much, but that's all I really wanted to do. And I she got me showing horses, which is cool. I mean, I look back on it, it was still a cool experience. And but I really wanted to do rodeo stuff. And but anyways, and I guess like to say that the common denominator and all that was I was always kind of like going after their approval and wanting to be like, be like what they envisioned me to be.
Right.
And, like, my mom was always picking out my clothes. And I mean, for a long time, actually, and it was kind of, I think, up until I got into, middle school, high school, as I got a bit more independence. But um, I, I just remember like I was just this kid that went to school and always wanted to wear boots and just kind of just a little bit different, man. I mean, I had friends and but I was also kind of a chameleon. Like I just wanted to fit in somewhere. And I don't know why I just had that longing to belong to some group of people or to fit in or, to feel popular or something like that.
Yeah,
And
that's very normal. I can relate to that 100%. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think a lot of kids just, they just want to have friends and they want to feel like they're cool and whatever, I mean, I was kind of a chubby little kid and and I kind of got picked on a little bit here and there and definitely had some self-esteem issues and kind of all that was brought on together, and like I mean, looking back on my life, I mean, I didn't really have any abusive type situations that I found myself in. I didn't I think I didn't quite understand like why my dad wasn't real affectionate to us to a degree. But and as I've grown older, like I realized that, that was part of his life, that was part of his upbringing, his story, and and I accept that, and I've definitely um, you know, I still admire the hell out of my dad. I mean, I really do. He's a wonderful man. And but like I still had this, going into adolescence and teenage years, I always had this just like big self-esteem problem. And I dealt with anxiety, but I didn't really know what it was. And and I probably had some little bit of depression. I know once I got in, like 14, 15, I was definitely dealing with depression and stuff like that.
You
And
think
I,
because you weren't fitting in, or why do you think that happened?
yeah, I think I think I just always felt kind of awkward, man. I think I just felt like I mean, I had friends, and like ultimately I made a lot of friends and I felt like I was, popular with a fair amount of people. And, it's kind of hard sometimes to pinpoint it. I think about that from time to time, like why I felt that way. And I think like initially when I was coming up to, I don't know if you want to call it like the transition between, adolescence and teenage years. I think that was a really awkward time for me. And I mean, it is for a lot of people, it's like you're just having all this hormones and all this shit going on with your
Yes.
body. You're just like this weird little kid that your voice is cracking and shit.
I
And
know. It's embarrassing.
my
As a
boy,
young man, it's very embarrassing.
yeah, man. And I my voice started to get really deep and stuff. And it was just like I was this little and I was barely like 5 feet tall, I was
You wake up one morning, you're like, "How you doing?"
yeah, yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. So it was just kind of, I don't know, man. It's like I can't think of anything that was really traumatic, that was like um made me do the things that I did later on in life, other than just having this kind of feelings of inadequacy for whatever reason and always wanting to seek my parents' approval or be all these things that I thought they wanted me to be.
Yeah.
Uh, and actually, I mean, ultimately, what I thought that I wanted, which led me to do a lot of things that are also part of my story. That is, I wanted to be nothing like them. I felt like that they were uptight. I felt like that um, that they weren't cool to me. And I became very resistant to kind of everything that they stood for,
Yeah.
and just kind of went my own way. And I had to learn some really painful lessons.
So, I mean, your childhood is your childhood. it doesn't have to be some specific thing. It sounds like you had a nice, decent, safe childhood, and it sounds pretty cool. You got to do the rodeo thing and the showing the horses and all that. And and
Yeah.
mom, of course, moms traditionally are overprotective of their children. Yeah, that's just the way it is. And you see those videos of dads compared to moms taking care of the baby, right? And the dad's like throwing the baby up in the air like 7 feet and catching, and the mom's doing the
Yeah.
normal traditional thing. I think that's just part of it. So you roll forward into your, I guess, teenagehood, we'll call it, right? You're going through those fun changes and everything. Was there something that you can remember that stands out that you're like, all of a sudden you made a shift in a direction that may not have been the greatest direction, which led you down the path that you ultimately ended up on?
Yeah, man. I mean, like I remember it like pretty vividly. Like, it's kind of like the origin story of all the mayhem that occurred in my life after that. And it was, I was still just like longing to fit in and longing to just feel like I belonged to some, I don't know, like a tribe or something, whatever you want to call it. But and I just started hanging out with people that were into, getting high and drinking and chasing girls and doing, and it was, man, it was appealing. It was super appealing. I mean, it was like, they were always doing what looked like a lot of fun on the weekends, and they had girls that liked them and talked about them, and it was, I just wanted to be that dude. And I think it started out as kind of just an innocent, like, running around with the boys and maybe doing stuff is not right, but it's fun, and it's kind of like there's a rush because you're getting away with it. And it's like,
Mhm.
talking about, some dude that's got a fake ID that's going to go buy us like this nasty vodka from some convenience store that sells to him, like we're getting,
Boone's Farm and all that fun
it was,
stuff.
it was like paint thinner,
Purple
and
Passion.
yeah, something like that, man. It's
Uh,
just like dumb crap that high school kids do that think that it's not going to do anything or lead to anything, other than maybe getting an MIP or whatever. And
yeah.
that was almost like a badge of honor. It never happened to me.
I had one of those.
Yeah, yeah. It's like that.
It's a
That was
funny story too, how the taste of
yeah. I know. I mean, like all my friends getting MIPs or MICs or something like that, having to call their parents to come pick them up, and
yeah.
just, yeah, it just, oh man. But we lived in this small town, and it was like, that's what you did. It's like somebody had like some land or something, and we would go steal some beer or whatever, and go just hang out in the pasture and get drunk and drive our trucks around and get them stuck in stock ponds and
Yeah.
doing just
No cow tipping.
uh I don't remember. I think we probably chased some cows, but I don't know if we did any cow tipping that I can remember. I'm sure some of my friends did.
I think of that
Definitely.
scene from Tommy Boy when they say, "I can't believe you've never been cow tipping before." And they go out and all the mayhem happens and they gets covered in mud.
Yeah.
That's so obviously you're hanging out with some folks and having some fun and doing some things that you're probably not the best choices for you at that age, right? And so it leads you down a certain path. And so from that point, what happened with you? What really took you in the far left side of things?
There was a certain degree of curiosity there, and obviously, like, I knew, like, how drinking made me feel, and I knew, like, it was just like this freedom. I didn't have to necessarily feel the things that bothered me. Like, it was just like an escape. I started doing cocaine, I guess, when I was 16, and it that was kind of the beginning of it all, and I found a lot of other stuff along the way, but alcohol and cocaine, and then and opiates. You were talking about the Dope Sick documentary,
Yeah.
or not, whatever you want, series, whatever you want to call it. And I mean, that's kind of part of my deal too. It's like I just kind of went down this path, and I found myself with people that I never imagined I'd be with, in places that it only seemed like in movies and stuff, and it just was, I just didn't, it was kind of one of those things like, how did I get here? And, and, um, and I don't know. I mean, there was part of it that was like, I kind of felt like I'm this hard ass or something, or like just this seasoned, I don't know what you want to call it, but I just did a lot of stuff that I'm not proud of it. I mean, but I didn't know, and of course, it was choices that I made that inevitably led me down that path, and and I own up to that. It's like nobody made me do the shit that I did, but the things that I didn't know at the time, that I was predisposed to addiction, and that was a big, I mean, still is one of the biggest things that I've had to overcome in my life, and it shaped my reality for 7 years. I mean, I was just, it took me a while to come to terms that I had a problem, and then it took me about just as long to actually do something about it. And and I put my family through a lot of pain. There's a lot of things that they don't know about, but there's definitely a lot of things that they witnessed firsthand, and I wish they wouldn't have. It's not, I guess it's more so just a shame thing on my part, but it got pretty dark, for a few years there, and I just didn't really know. Like, I mean, I tried it, everything I could on my own to try to quit doing what I was doing, but it, just kept winding back up to the same spot. I found myself in some pretty ugly parts of Fort Worth, and hanging out in uh, abandoned houses and apartment complexes, and just doing shit that I never thought that I would do, to get high, and to really, I mean, it was like a train wreck. And it's like some of those things, like I really don't want to talk about, would not want to get into, but um, you know, I'm thankful. It's weird to say like that I'm thankful for that stuff, because it's like I definitely saw a lot of darkness that I don't think, well, I speak for myself, but I don't know. I mean, everybody has their own issues and things that they face. I mean, it can be a number of different things, some kind of, illness that you deal with, or whatever. And I graduated from high school, and then over that summer, it's like I dropped like 40 pounds. I mean, I was just a skeleton. I weighed like 125 pounds, and I was just like super pasty. None of my clothes fit.
And they knew what was going on, right? At that point.
I think like they didn't want to accept it at first, but then like ultimately, like they were like, yeah, some shit is not right, so my mom's best friend worked at a methadone clinic, and she was like, I think she was like an intake coordinator or some type of counselor or something there. And so my mom like took me there one day, and there was a guy there that it's like this NASCAR like speed loving redneck dude that had gotten sober, and he was like a bull rider, and he had this really interesting story, but I was just like, it kind of freaked me out a little bit, even though I had been doing this really just dumb shit, hanging out in these weird, it just like, it kind of freaked me out because I just didn't understand like how like, okay, so you got sober and you've been sober like 13 years. Like, what do you do for fun? Like what is the enjoyment that you have in your life? And I had that's where my mindset was like, you mean if I get sober right now, I'm not gonna be able to drink when I'm 21? No, sir. I'm not
Mm,
having that. And but I was super immature, and I was just a kid, and but I was making adult choices to a degree, and um so I ended up going to treatment. I went to treatment for 30 days, and then I got back out, and started using like as soon as I could, and I ended up going back to treatment again, and and it's like I kind of had these like ebbs and flows of like, I'm gonna clean up, and I would kind of clean up, or I would stop doing this, taking pills, or I'd stop doing coke or whatever, and I kind of just would just kind of medicate with, at least it wasn't that, it might be this, but at least it's not that. And I kind of just went back and forth with this weird justification of still being screwed up, but
mm,
I didn't know how to live, man. I really didn't. Like, I didn't know how to deal with myself.
mm.
And so, it took me a while, man. It really did. And Oxycontin, like in that show, Dope Sick. That stuff was like super prevalent around that time, and I definitely had an issue with that, and I would drink and do cocaine and do Oxycontin, and that was kind of my cycle, and
Yeah.
um, it almost killed me, you know. I not real proud of this, but I had been doing all three of those things, and I don't know where in my head that I decided that I was going to get my car and drive home and get ready to go to work. There was I, there's a period of time there where I don't know what happened. I just remember I got in my car, I was at my friend's house, and then I woke up in the back of an ambulance.
Mm,
And like, man, it was, it's still vivid. I still remember it. It's something I don't really want to remember, but at the same time, it's something that I think is in a weird way kind of good to remember. Um, and I basically had just passed out and was starting to my nervous system was starting to shut down,
mm,
and I was, they said I had to been 20 minutes later or something like that, I probably would have died. And for whatever reason, these people were driving along and they found me, and called 911, and they resuscitated me or whatever. And but that still wasn't enough for me to ultimately change. It took about eight more months before something happened that it was kind of a replay of when I was 18 and I was like a walking skeleton, because that's kind of what I was again. I had a buddy that I was living with, and he really I told him thank you. I don't know if he really grasped like um, the severity of the situation, or just how big of an impact he had in this deal of essentially saving my life. Like, he was really worried about me, and he ended up he didn't really know my parents, but he ended up kind of on a whim, like driving over to their house on a Friday night and just basically telling them that, hey, my family calls me Brady, and they say, Brady's got a problem and he really needs help. And I that like I guess a couple days later I drove to my parents' house to borrow a vehicle to help one of my dope dealers move out of his house.
oh,
And
geez.
yeah, and it was ridiculous. But my mom, she just kind of straight up laid it out there, and got real honest with me and just asked me, and I had just had the shit kicked out of me, man. Like I was tired of, I didn't want to be the way that I was, but I didn't know how else to live, and she just said, look, uh, we know what you've been doing, and we know that it was obvious, dude. I mean, I was like a skeleton, and I looked sickly, and she's like, look, we're gonna get you some help, but this is the last time. I mean, if you don't get help this time, then that's it. You just need to get out of our lives. And I took that really seriously, man. I mean, I love my mom, and like that whole like needing her approval thing kicked back in, and I was just beat to shit, dude. And so for me, like, I just wanted to do something different, but at the same time, I was really scared. Like I had been doing that stuff so much that I was physically dependent on it, and I was gonna get sick, and I knew I was gonna get sick. But um, you know, I couldn't keep living like that. So
You may not have survived if you did. So
right. Yeah. I mean, the chances, weren't good. I mean, it's just your body can only, it's your body can only take so much of that crap. And this was kind of before fentanyl and all that stuff, or whatever's going around these days, and that's killed so many people. But I mean, still, like, I lost friends to overdoses, and I mean, it was a very, very real thing.
you know, when you're sharing your testimony, from this vantage point, it sparks a lot of memories for me of my experience growing up, and a lot of similarities. And so I try to look at things now, and it's like, okay, so I don't regret. I'm a little disappointed in the choices that I made. I made it through it. Praise God, praise whoever you believe in, right?
Yeah.
Why did we make it and others didn't? And I look at that and I'm like, okay, I don't know the answer, but it reminds me that you, myself, others like us, we need to use our talents, and whatever those are, right? Whatever those talents are, to share with the world. And that's one of the reasons why I started this, was to show that it is possible to go through these types of situations and choices in your life and almost die, and for whatever reason you make it, and try to understand the reason why. And I don't know if you can understand the reason why, and I think it's just that it's just wasn't your time, and you got to do the best you can every day and every moment, because we just don't know what's going to happen. What is it that you would tell a young parent, right? So what would you give them? What advice would you give them to do differently with their own child that might make a difference in their child's life, and they may not go down that path? Is there anything you can think of?
Man, like I mean, obviously I'm not a parent, I've not yet. I mean, you never know. I mean, it's definitely been something that we have discussed, and may become a reality at some point. And I've thought about, I guess, like, my parents, I mean, I knew drugs and things like that were bad, and I knew like certain things were not, they didn't approve of. I mean, we grew up in kind of, I wouldn't say like a really strict Christian household, but like that part of our life and that faith was important, and it still is important, to my parents and to me as well. But I think like I would just be more on, be open to a degree about and try to express to, I'm trying to put myself in, if and when I have my own children, I would express to them, that there is a consequence to doing things like this. And you may or may not have to face some of the same things that I did, but the reality of it is that some of us are preconditioned, I believe, genetically, that addiction can be a very real thing in your life, and it is a possibility, whether it's porn or alcohol or all kinds of different things. So I guess like I would just try to explain that as best I could to my kids about not just because when we were kids, like the dare thing was like a big deal, that is good in its own right, and I remember like seeing like the cop come into our classroom, and he had like this case with all these like different kinds of drugs in it, and he's like telling us like what these things are, and that we watched these videos about some dude like living on the streets, smoking crack and whatever, but it's I think stuff like that. Yeah, that's inevitably where you can end up, but sometimes it's a bit more slow burn than that. And I don't know, man. I don't necessarily have like a solid, like, this is the plan, what I would tell you to do. But I also think just having awareness and really knowing your kids, and not that my parents didn't know me, and I'm sure that I put up some boundaries there, but like, I think they enabled me to do some things, that maybe they shouldn't have. But you got to think about it. They're just trying to do the best they can, and I don't blame them for any of that stuff. I think just just having awareness about the reality that addiction can affect anyone, and just being involved in your kids' lives as much as you can, without being like a helicopter parent. Because kids you got to experience life, man. You gotta go out there and do dumb shit and learn some mistakes, and just like shit, crash your car or something, do something. But learn that it's that, I don't know, man. It's, for me, I guess, like, I'm thankful for those mistakes. I wish I hadn't gone as deep down, but and I don't blame my parents for anything, they love me as much as they could, and they still do, man. Really, like, but and I guess there's also a flip side to that, is that you can love your kids to death, and I've seen that in recovery too, is that, and people coming into recovery having a hard time staying sober because their parents or some kind of support system around them enables them too much, to where their independence, their identity is too entangled in that. So I don't know, man. It's kind of it's like it's an onion, man. There's a lot of layers to that. And
and I'll just add to that I have two teenage sons, 16, going on 17, and a 19-year-old, which is like, I don't feel like I have children that are that old, but it's just like, I was like, okay, so there wasn't much open affection. There wasn't many, if any, I love yous. There weren't conversations about consequences, to your point, of things that could happen. It was either like, okay, everything is going fine because you're listening to what I said, right? Because I said so, with no explanation. So I had to figure it out myself. And so I started exploring. And I didn't understand what the potential consequences were. And I was that kind of kid that just wanted to explore and figure it out. And when your neighbor is a not so great influence on you. We were balanced each other out in that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
You start to do things, and it starts with cigarettes really for us, and then moved on from there.
Yeah.
And what I tried to do is just be straightforward with my kids from as early on as I could, and be there, number one, physically, but be there mentally and listen, give them the opportunity to share and to ask questions and things like that. And I do believe that made a huge impact on my sons, who so far are doing wonderful. This extreme opposite of what I was doing in my childhood, my adolescence. And so I'm so grateful for that. You just never know, because they can still, we're all one decision away from messing things up, right?
Yeah.
So just, I think they felt like they could be heard, could be themselves, and make some decisions, and deal with the consequences to the best of their ability. And I straight up told them, even I tell them on a regular basis, like, to the best of your ability, just stay away from all of it.
Yeah.
Just stay away from it
Yeah.
all.
It's not worth it.
Yeah, just, it's just easier. It really is. And luckily they surround themselves with other young adults that believe the same thing, and they're passionate about education and learning and growing, and just, those kinds of things. And unfortunately, that wasn't the path that I followed. And so I'm just trying to instill that in them, and I think it's made an impact. So communication,
Yeah.
the generation of our parents, um, and prior to that, were just, it was just a different world, different mindset, and they did the best they could with what
Yeah.
they knew how to do. And I don't hold that against my parents either, my grandparents, etc. So I can definitely relate to that. So to kind of wrap up things, I really appreciate you sharing. You're very candid about your story, and I appreciate that. And it's very valuable for others to hear that, um, you know somebody who's going through something or has gone through something, it is possible to make it. And you
Yeah.
were in a very, very bad, dark place, it sounds like, and here you are today. So how do you define success for yourself at this point, after going through all that?
I'll kind of wrap this up about the whole sobriety deal. But the last time I went to treatment is um, the last date that I got all screwed up and I was on OxyContin and all that crap. I mean, it was August 2nd of 07, and I went through that whole process. I mean, I was scared out of my mind to come back to Fort Worth, and I ended up living in this little hill country town for about 5 years, and I lived in a halfway house for about a good portion of the first year I lived down there, and I just kind of dove into this program of recovery, and it was kind of just my singular focus was just to stay sober, and everything else resulting from that kind of fell into play. I mean, I was able to go back to school. Ended up getting a bachelor's degree in biology. I got accepted to a PhD program, and I went on. I ended up not getting a PhD, but you don't have to have a degree to be successful. There's that's just part of my story. And I ended up getting a master's degree in molecular and cellular biology. I kind of downplayed my intelligence, I think, or I didn't think I was that smart when I was younger and I was getting loaded and doing all that stuff. And then, I was amazed, like, of the things that I could do once I took all that stuff away. And I started, my relationship with my family got better, and I was in a group of men that had long-term sobriety, and that had a lot of varying degrees of success. I mean, they're all successful men in my eyes. I mean, whatever society has their own definition of success, but like, the peace and gratitude that was put forth by those men for living a day-to-day sober lifestyle was one of the most beautiful things that I got to experience in my life. and having them kind of pave the way for me to essentially grow up and be a man. Like, I had an individual that was, probably one of the most impactful people that I've met in my life, and he, kind of took me under his wing, and he helped me, one, learn how to be a man, two, have a better relationship with my father, and also my mom too. I mean, just to be a more well-rounded individual, and played a huge part of my life in that regard, and just helped me believe in myself, and I owe a lot to those guys, and to that little town, and it was kind of just like this rebirth, I guess, if that's what you want to call it, and it was a lot of fun too, man. I mean, it was a beautiful little town in the hill country, and not that many people there. There wasn't that much stuff to do, but this river ran right through town, and we would go to all these random swimming holes and just slide down the dam, and it was a cool time in my life. Like, I have a lot of fond memories of that. And for me, like, I guess success today, I mean, I don't know if my life is ever going to be where I exactly want it to be or envision it to be in certain areas, but I do have a lot of peace in my life today. I mean, the past couple of years have been rough, man. I mean, with the injuries that I've sustained, and all other things that have happened within my family, and job related stuff. I mean, it's definitely been it's been a little bit of darkness there, but I've been able to kind of fall back on a lot of those things that I learned from that time period and from those guys, and it has been a foundation that I've been able to get through all this stuff, and gave me a more spiritual awareness, and I think that's a big part of it. Like, I know that you have had your own struggles with stuff, and you've had to go deal with things in your own right, in your own story, and I it's just a cool thing, man. I mean, because it's like we have this whatever you want to call it, hole in our soul or something like that. At least for me, I speak for myself. Like, I didn't want to accept that, I wasn't able to get drunk or do whatever ever again. But when I learned that I could feel contentment and far beyond that, kind of just by following the example of others, and making some changes and having some acceptance, I'm just thankful for that, man. I mean, so I guess, like, for me today, if I look at success and the wholeness of my life, I would just boil it down to gratitude, because, like, I know I made the choices to put myself in those places and to put all that crap in my body. But there's also another choice, and there is a way out. I just didn't realize it was going to be so great.
The gratitude is my number one daily ritual, and it occurs usually in the morning, first thing, sometimes in the middle of the day if I need it, and then again before I fall asleep. As I'm falling asleep, I'm just reciting things, and sometimes I'll write down as well. But I've been doing it for so long now. It's pretty much the same things over and over and over, but it's a great reminder, and it really does make a huge impact. And that, with the meditation, and then I've started doing breath work about 6-8 weeks ago every day.
Cool.
And sometimes twice a day. And I incorporate yoga, stretching with that as well. My anxiety is almost none now. And it was so bad to where I couldn't even catch my breath.
Yeah.
It was so extreme in 2019.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what to do. I was trying everything outside of drugs and alcohol, right? I was trying anything that I could possibly do. Oh, it was a tough road, dude. Tough
Yeah,
road.
dude. I've been in a similar shoes with that stuff too, man. I mean, I took different kinds of varying medication to deal with it. And I mean, I'm now, I don't take anything for it other than I do take some supplements and I do meditate every day and, exercise and try to eat healthy and, just limit some of the things I put in my mind as far as social media nonsense. And,
Yes.
it's like,
Uh,
just, I try to, I try
Stay out of
to,
the rabbit hole.
yeah, man. I mean, I just try to like do positive things and do things that I know are going to benefit me or make me feel good about myself and try to limit those anxious thoughts and feelings because man, it's like I know. I mean, these past couple of years have just been just full of anxiety for me. Whether I did, I got hurt, and that was a gnarly experience, and that was honestly like, other than getting through the whole addiction thing, that was the hardest thing that I've had to deal with, and a lot of those feelings came back up, and being bedridden for like 4 months and having to learn how to walk again, and that, dude, that was gnarly.
That's a
Um,
whole nother podcast episode. Oh
yeah,
man,
yeah,
how much time you got?
yeah. I mean, that's a whole nother one too. So we can save that
Yeah.
for later. But yeah, so it's I I'm just I mean I it's hard to not think about anything else but gratitude. I mean, uh, it's cool to be where I'm at today as opposed to where I was 6 months ago or a year ago even. And I was looking at this video the other day, and it was my nephew Sawyer and me, and it was like one of the first times that I had walked without crutches. And
Mm.
he was learning how to walk too, and so his little wobbly gait and my wobbly gait, like we were just both wobbling together, and it was
Oh
just so it
man.
was just yeah, it was just so funny, man. I mean,
Uh,
life is all about perspective, man. And I just it's just, gosh, I would hope, my hope with doing stuff like this and talking about the things that I've been through is just that if there's just some dude out there, some woman out there, whoever, like that's going through the same thing, it's like, just convey that there is a way out and there is hope, and that's the biggest thing that I would want people to know. And I know it's like it's hard to see that. It's really hard to see that when you're in the middle of it. And but it takes what it takes to get there.
yeah, man, you got to go through it. You have to. It's the only way to get to the other side. Is you got to go straight through it. And man, it is scary. It is painful. It is emotional. You lose people, you lose things, and you don't realize at the time that. And this is my perspective: is that you didn't really lose those things. It was a gain for you because it was getting you to a better place, right? The better version of yourself, and you were just attached to that identity of who you thought you were and who you became through those choices that you made. And once you decide to just change one thing in a positive way and shed the old you, man, life just gets so much better, and you really do appreciate everything. And I was on a ride today on my bike and try to ride and run every single day, and I was just checking out the beautiful change in the leaves on the trees, and I was just almost like rode right off the trail because I was just looking at them like, oh wow, those are
Yeah,
beautiful. And I used to never do that. I used to never
Yeah.
pay attention to any of those things because I was thinking, oh, when am I going to get my next six pack or my XYZ, thing to distract me and get me high and yada, yada, yada. And man, it's
Yeah.
just different. It's just so different now. And you see your senses are heightened
Yeah.
in every way. And it's just a beautiful thing. It really is. It really is. Yeah.
Yeah. No, like my parents just got so we kind of got out of the horse game, rodeo stuff. Sorry, my wiener dog was chewing on something, but anyways, kind of got out of the horses for a little while, and actually for a long time. I hadn't rode a horse up until like a few months ago for about 22 years. And yeah, and so my parents just recently got back into it, and I showed up at the barn the other day, and I was in my Vans. I was just in a t-shirt and Vans and blue jeans or whatever, and I just said, I'm just gonna go for a ride, and it was like, dude, I rode the horse around the arena a couple times, and I was like down at kind of the other end of the arena, and I almost started tearing up, dude, because it was just like, it brought me back. It brought me back to like when I was a kid and just riding through the pasture with my dad. But also, like, I was just thankful that I could still do it, from being injured and stuff. And it was like, man, it was one of the most serene, like peaceful moments I've really had like in a while. And I am very thankful for it, and so just kind of relating to what you were talking about with riding the bikes, it's just like you do have this heightened sense of awareness and heightened sense of just that you recognize things that are, I guess, beautiful, for lack of a better word, or maybe that is the best word, but
Yeah.
it's really cool, man, and to go from one extreme to the other, it's like you just when I was doing all the stuff that I did when I was younger, it's like I didn't see any of that, or maybe if I saw it, I saw it in very short glimpses. But I like the clarity of my mind that I have these days, and the development of thoughts and things that just captivate me, and it's just real life, and it's all around us. And so, yeah, man.
Amen, brother. I appreciate
Yeah.
I appreciate your time, man, and your vulnerability and your honesty. We all have a story, we all have a journey, and for you to share it is a blessing to me, and hopefully a blessing to those that listen and or watch. I wanted to thank you personally for listening to this podcast episode. It means the world to me. If you found value in it or any of the other podcast episodes, please subscribe, please share, and comment with what you liked about it. And also take a few minutes to visit chainsthroughpain.com. I've put a lot of hard work into this site. It includes all the links to the podcast episodes. I added a brand new store so you can get your own Chains Through Pain merchandise to help support this project. You can also learn a little bit more about yourself. There's some tests that you can take to discover your personality, your likes, dislikes, different types of jobs that you may be a good fit for. Recommended books, which I've read all of them multiple times, some of them. And then I also offer coaching, one-on-one coaching, and I will soon be launching a new program for one-on-one coaching that will be available. So look for that notice. Thank you so much again. You have the best day ever.